I'm the CARDI representative to Belize and the biotechnologist for CARDI. It's a pleasure to be here today moderating this session. And the session is Alliance for Coconut Supply. Sorry, this phone decided to do every kind of stuff. That's why we're going in paper still. Instead of the new, no, this is somebody's presentation. You see, this phone decided it was working fine until we decided to come in. Alliance of the Coconut Industry Development for the Caribbean, status on new varieties to advance supply of coconut planted material within the CARIFORUM, hybridization and tissue culture. This topic is very dear to me. Tissue culture is one area that we have been working, and we're looking forward to see what is one of the solutions. If you participated in the session before, you hear all the limitations and all the challenges, and as well where we have to go. So hopefully this session will complement that one. Okay, so we will start with our first. I want to recognize everyone. I don't think it's necessary to state by names, but I will appreciate if when you introduce yourself, you say who you are, face the camera, and where you're from, and then your question, okay? So the first presenter this afternoon is Mr. Tristan Alvarez, project coordinator from CARDI and manager of the Coconut Project. Just give a clap.
Thanks, Mara. All right, thank you very much, and good afternoon to one and all. It's a pleasure to be here, and good to see you all and those online as well. First off, let me thank the European Union for the funding that we have received to implement this project. It has been just about 8 years in the vineyard working in coconuts, right? And we would have been co-implementers along with the International Trade Center, who are very grateful to be, collaborative and heartwarming partners. It has been a real fruitful partnership, I must say. And we're not doing this alone. It's an Alliances for Action approach. So we're working with a number of partners in all of the different countries, especially the Coconut Industry Board, who are one of the leading, well, not one of the leading coconut agencies of excellence within the region. Now, with all that said, as I said, it has been 8 years. And I want to invite my colleagues online to just share with us a photo on the program. We have just wanted to recognize and give acknowledgement to what we call some of our fallen soldiers. During the life of the project, we would have lost at least 2 persons we would have been aware of. So one is our CARDI representative out of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Mr. Gregory Linton. I must say he was a meticulous person when it came to organization and keeping records and data with regards to coconuts. And his contribution to what we have done, not only in coconuts, but as CARDI, has really been instrumental and, above and beyond par, always going the extra mile. One of my experiences is where he missed his flight to go to Dominica, and of his own free will, he took his own money and traveled to Dominica so he could be part of that field trip. I think, Dr. Mary, you would have been part of that field trip as well. And we also lost Mr. Ganesh Haricharan out of Ghana, one of our lead farmers. If you ever met him, he's a jovial guy who would bring a smile to your face in the shortest of times. And it really, there's no words to say, honestly, right? So we just want to give a few moments, a minute of silence, just to pay tribute and recognize their contribution under this project. Yeah, please stand. All right, thank you very much. So, and also, thank you to Ganesh and Gregory for their stewardship and for the contribution they would have made. With that, let me hand back over to the chair, and we could continue with today's proceeding.
Thank you very much. Now we continue with Matthias Urruti Goiti. He is the representative for the International Trade Center, and we thank them for being here. So,
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the invitation and the opportunity. As Omaira said, my name is Matthias Urrutioiti, and I work in the International Trade Center together with my colleague Hernan Manson. We have been leading the implementation of the Coconut Project for the last 8-9 years in the region. We have been very honored to be partnering with CARDI, with the support of the European Union, with very strong institutions like the Coconut Industry Boards, with experts like Wayne Mary, and with basically all the people and institutions from the regions that have been supporting us on this effort. When we started the project 10 years ago, coconut didn't have so much space on the discussion in the region. There was a good understanding that there were market opportunities for coconut, but the question was, can the Caribbean region and small farmers and processors from the Caribbean really benefit and try to embark on this process? As we have been discussing on the last panels and for the last couple of days, we don't have the answers to all the questions that have been raised, but we know and we are much more aware of what are the main challenges that we have to face and where are the main opportunities. And I have to say that one of the key secrets of what we have tried to do is the partnership approach, partnering with regional and with local institutions, partnering with the private sector and with cooperatives. This has been key. As Tristan mentioned, we are reaching now the end of the second phase of the project, and it will not be a third phase of the Coconut Project led by CARDI and ITC, but we have to move both institutions, and notably the institutions in the region like the Coconut Industry Board, to basically go beyond projects and systematize our priorities for the coconut sector. And I think that this discussion and the conclusions of this week are very important for that. We think that there are many institutions and partners around the table, also online, that are very committed to the development of this sector. And we think that this is very relevant and very important. And on the issue of tissueculture and planting material, we are very knowledgeable and very aware that for small companies to be sustainable on international markets, they need to have a diversified strategy with different products and different markets to minimize risk. We have come to also understand much better how important access to quality planting material for the Caribbean and for every region in the world has become critical for growing the sector. And there, the issue of diversification also is very relevant. Probably one solution will not address the issue, or one approach will not provide the solution that we are looking for. That is why we need to look for complementary solutions. We have talked about positive selection, movement of planting material, tissueculture. All this should be part of the equation on which the stakeholders in the region need to continue to work. And basically, that's why we are very interested to the discussion that will unfold in the coming hour and a half. And we really look forward to continue working with the region and to continue supporting CARDI and the different stakeholders on this sector. So just to say one again, thank you very much. We are very humble and very honored to have been part of this journey with the Caribbean institutions. And we hope that we have contributed with our expertise. And we hope that we have allowed the different institutions to come closer together to work for the sector. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias. That's nice. After so many years working in coconut, we will miss the partnership. I think this created friends, so we sure they will be back in the region. For now, we also want Mr. Ansari Hussein, Executive Director for CARDI. He also come some regards.
Thank you, Omaira. And yes, there is a partnership already brewing between ITC and CARDI under a different arrangement. So as you heard from Tristan and Matthias, since 2015, CARDI and the ITC, together with a network of partners, have been working to develop the region's coconut value chain through financial support of the European Union. Interventions would have been made in critical areas along the value chain to address challenges such as the unavailability of quality planting material, pests and diseases, access to financing, and value-added product development, among others. One of the earliest challenges the project sought to address was this issue of the unavailability of quality planting material in the region. Under this project, 56 nurseries were either established or rehabilitated in the 12 project countries. Based on the capacity, the potential acreages that can be planted out with material produced from these nurseries are approximately a little over 14,000 hectares. Apart from this, the first phase of the project, which ran from 2015 to 2018, a new variety, the Brazilian green dwarf that everyone should be familiar with by now, was imported into Barbados from Brazil. This variety added to the gene pool and served to place the industry on a more sustainable footing. Subsequently to this, based on the performance under local conditions and its prolificacy, the same Brazilian green dwarf was introduced into Guyana under phase 2 in 2022. Following that first shipment, the government of Guyana subsequently purchased a further 14,000 seed nuts and established seed gardens at Nari and Hope Estate for farmers to access planting material. 13,000 seed nuts of the same variety have also been procured and made available to Dominica, which is still resuscitating their industry following the devastation caused by Hurricane Maria. Support has also been extended to Belize, which expressed interest recently in reintroducing lethal yellowing tolerant and dual purpose coconut varieties into the country. CARDI, with the support of the CIB, yes, I see you shaking your head, so that's true, procured 8,000 seed nuts for the Maypan variety from Jamaica to Belize. This variety, which shows tolerance to lethal yellowing disease, are currently being germinated and quarantined at CARDI Station in Central Farm for distribution by the Ministry of Agriculture in early 2024. Under the project, the third option which is being considered to increase the supply of quality coconut planting material in the region is this issue, this testiculture and hybridization. The session today is designed to update you and round off the discussion on the impact made so far on these strategic linkages made through South-to-South partnerships and engagements with Mexico in this area. With coconuts being identified as one of the priority commodities for development in the Caribbean, we are hopeful that the investments required for testiculture and hybridization can be viewed as important to addressing the challenge of planting material. It's not a cheap business. In addition, the development of sanitary and phytosanitary systems, alliances with regional and hemispheric partners are also important to closing the planting material supply gap in the Caribbean. CARDI, as the lead agency for the coconut industry development and expansion, we remain committed to developing a productive and sustainable coconut industry and is obviously, as we always say, open to working with all partners towards the achievement of this goal and others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ED, as we call you. I have to make a clarification. I hope I don't offend you. We bought 6,000 nuts and we got 2 as a present. So we have to admit that. Well, so we are thankful because that helped us between the government of Belize and CARDI, pay 6,000. The 2 extra will actually help us to set up a bank, a gene bank for our own, be able to help and evaluate because CARDI never was supposed to get plants. Now we have. So thank you very much for those words. As you could see, this creating friendships and long-lasting friendship and knowledge. Now we want to hear a little more what is happening, and Tristan will have to set the pace. What is the way forward right now? So I open the field for you.
All right, thanks. All right, thanks, Omira. And before looking forward, I want us to take a little step backwards and see where we came from. So, as I mentioned earlier, we started this project. In late 2014, and we have been in it for just about 8 years. Right. Yeah, and we have been at this for just about 8 years. And so, in terms of looking at the supply of coconut planting material, that is one of the issues that came to the fore very early on. There is acknowledged recognition globally that there is a shortfall, a shortage of coconut planting material to introduce into production, right? We know that there is high demand for coconut and coconut products. However, we don't have enough coconut trees to put into production so as to meet that demand. And so at the end, well, let me begin this way. This project sought to treat with that, and this is the outline for the project. Now, the ED touched on most of what I'm going to say, so I could probably run through pretty quickly, but I want to hone in on a few things, right? So this project began, as I said, late 2014. It was known as the Coconut Phase 1 project. It covered about 9 countries at the onset, right? Coconut Phase 2 brought on an additional 3, and they brought an additional 1 because we brought an additional 2 at the end of Phase 1. And so we were 12 countries strong as it relates to implementation of the coconut project and the work that we've done. Right? As it says here, it is funded by the European Union under the Caribbean Regional Indicative Program through the CARIFORUM Secretariat, and of course co-implemented by the International Trade Center and CARDI with Alliances for Action partners across the region. So, in Phase 1 and under Phase 2 as well, we have been looking at essentially 2 outcomes: enhanced competitiveness of the coconut farmers and strengthened and integrated coconut value chains. And I want to hone in on the planted material side of things. At the end of 2018, there was a meeting held and a discussion surrounding a 3-pronged strategic approach to treating with that shortage of coconut planting material. One was to identify material locally within country, what we call the mother palm identification approach, where you would source seed nuts from trees that met a particular criteria, and that would go into coconut nurseries and be disseminated to farmers. The second approach is via tissue culture, which is one of, if not the safest way to move germplasm and, of course, mass multiply. However, that technology is limited to a few institutions, if I may say so, and, of course, one institution, perhaps, who have the ability to do it at scale in our part of the world, in our hemisphere. The third option, which perhaps is one for consideration, is the importation of seed nuts from third countries. And by third countries, I mean countries outside of our region: Costa Rica, Brazil, Mexico, etc. And so we forged ahead with, of course, the first approach: mother palm identification and seed nut selection. It's safe. It's within your own borders in terms of what you have, so you're not likely or unlikely to introduce any new pathogens or anything of the like. And so we train persons in identifying mother palms to look for those characteristics, those criteria, and source those seed nuts and put them into nurseries and make them available to farmers. You heard the data, the stats from the ED earlier. I must say for Guyana, they took that training and that knowledge and they ramped it up to now have decentralized nurseries around Guyana. And I must say that had to have had an impact given the interest that has been shown by the farming public in terms of purchasing planting material. I want to arguably say similarly for Jamaica, they have satellite nurseries across the country as well in terms of making planting material available. And here you would see some of the work we have done in terms of that mother palm identification and seed nut selection, right? Oh, sorry, I see some of you are taking photos, so let me pause for a second. Right, so these are some of the characteristics of a good mother palm. Arguably, don't want to get into this too now. It's a bit technical, and I'm not the technical person to speak on this, right? But as I said, we would have strengthened nurseries to receive those seed nuts from mother palms, and not only from mother palms, but also nuts sourced from third countries. So those nurseries were strengthened, and of course, the material was made available to farmers within those countries. And this is some of what the nurseries look like. So tissue culture, as I made mention, there's a particular Sisi, so Sisi from Mexico. They have cracked the code, as it were, to do tissue culture and to mass multiply planted material and make it available to countries. There are persons in the room who could speak technically to this way more than I could, right? So I'll just say that our experience has left us with some lessons learned, right? I'll leave it at that. We have onboarded those lessons, and you're going to hear an update later on from our CIB colleagues in terms of the work done. Basically, we want to improve the survival rate, the survivability of the plantlets once they're weaned and hardened. You're also going to hear a presentation from Grenada and their experience with tissue culture as well, right? So these are some of the trees that are currently in production, grown from tissue culture. Those that have survived, we have been monitoring, and they appear to be doing well. And as you see, they have some good characteristics as far as we could tell with the naked eye and all of that. Right, so the importation of planted material from third countries, and here we're talking about seed nuts, right? The ED made mention of what the work we've done, so we procured 6,000 Brazilian green dwarf seed nuts for Barbados. That was towards the end of phase 1, 2018. I had the opportunity and privilege to travel to Barbados 3 years later and see that they were now coming into production. So they are early bearers, and they bear very close to the ground. So easy for harvesting, right? Under phase 2, we have considered and implemented efforts to introduce more of that material into the region, to broaden the genetic stock, as it were. And so we supported Guyana with the introduction of 1,000 Brazilian green dwarf seed nuts from Cohibra. As I mentioned, you're going to hear a bit more of that from our colleague Ricky from Hope Estate. And via that introduction, Guyana, of their own interest and volition, were spirited enough to import a further 14,000 seed nuts from Brazil. So that demonstrates some of the interest there in building their industry. And I always say that there seems to be 3 countries that are leading the way, as it were, but perhaps I might have time to get to that later on. And these are the nuts as were received from Cohibra, that first shipment of 1,000 seed nuts, which went to Hope Estate, Guyana. As Edie mentioned, we also procured nuts from CIB Jamaica, facilitating a request from the Ministry of Agriculture in Belize to have Maypan seed nuts introduced, right? Because they wanted to reintroduce that particular variety in terms of its resistance to lethal yellowing. So that has been done, right? So we are looking forward to the rollout of that and continue monitoring efforts. And dare I say, Omira, the ministry out of Belize, they have also gone to Brazil as well, not so?
They actually took the trip in that time to identify material. But since we had introduced the green, Brazilian green in 2007, a farmer brought them, they actually got disease from them. They got 10,000, and what the support we gave them is we set up the nursery and help them to set up all the material. Right now, they are in the process of selling it. Okay.
And I must say, we also supported the ministry in first the setup of their nursery and the expansion of that nursery. And we also did 2 satellite nurseries as well in Belize. 4, as I'm being reminded. And Belize has also, I think it was in the Board of Governors meeting earlier, they made mention of their strong connection with INIFAB. So that is also something that we took note of, and we have also supported their training efforts as well, right? So Dominica, so most recently we have sought to raise the level of planting material in Dominica. As made mention, their industry would have been devastated by Hurricane Maria. And so we wanted to reintroduce planted material. So we procured 13,000 Brazilian green dwarf seed nuts from Cohibra, and they actually have arrived in Dominica. So we are currently going through the process of ensuring that everything is safe and above board and whatnot. So you could expect more reports from us as we move forward as to our experience with that shipment of nuts. There was a previous experience that I won't go into right now that wasn't the best, but as I said, lessons learned, right? So we learn as we go along the way. And let me also put a caveat to that. It wasn't for a lack of doing the right thing, right? Right. So this just goes through some of the steps in terms of the procurement of the seed nuts from Cohibra once again. So Grenada has most recently expressed interest in procuring some seed nuts as well. So we're seeing it gaining traction across the region. So there's interest in 1,600 seed nuts from Cohibra. We are working with them in terms of the process to bringing this material, and it's still very early on at this point. So suffice it to say, we do look forward to supporting Grenada in this effort, and we look forward to a fruitful outcome, as it were. Right. So Antigua and Barbuda, they have a program of their own out of the Department of Forestry. They have procured planting material out of Costa Rica, and they have a good, robust program in making those seed nuts available, not only to farmers, but of course also to those who are active in the tourism industry. It's something, the elements of it that we want to, at least I myself would like to replicate. And so this is something that we have taken note of. They have expressed further interest to procure more material and have reached out to CARI for that support, and also Coconut Industry Board. So we're still in discussions, but we're looking forward to see what the outcomes of that would be. I know Trinidad and Tobago had a previous experience of bringing in tissue culture material. Other countries like St. Lucia and Grenada, that experience has left all of us with some lessons learned, right? But there's still some interest there. And suffice it to say, there have been some communication that India has been identified as a potential source of planting material for Guyana. Out of the Cocotech Expo and exhibition, there would have been engagements with DJ Farms, if I recall the name correctly. And so they are looking to be a potential source of planting material for Guyana. But of course, extra-regional importation of nuts, there are some considerations as coming from the previous session on advancing the movement of germplasm we should take into consideration. So I won't go into the considerations because I think there are experts who could speak more readily to this. This was just to set the tone and to let you know where we've come from. It has been a trilogy, if I could say so, in terms of that first meeting in 2018. We had an event, a webinar in 2021 that was CWA, held virtually, where we spoke to the matter of mother palms and planting material. And now, as the ED said, we want to round off this discussion and not bring it to a close, as it were, but really to advance it in terms of how do we move forward. So with that, I will now hand over to the chair so we could hear from some of our other presenters and their experiences.
Thank you very much. That was very comprehensive. I think for everybody it has been a journey. And I think the experience of bringing the plants is one, but then see it grow and produce is another. So we want to hear from Mr. Every time I take a mic. Yeah, he has a hand name and he don't want me to say it, but I will. Ricky Rumcharan, general manager of Hope Farms. He will give us his experience from the point of view of producing the plant. So, welcome him.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm waiting for the presentation. Yeah. All right. That's it. My name is Ricky Rupshan. I'm the general manager of what is referred to as Hope Coconut Industries Limited. That's the correct name, but in Guyana, when you go farmers' language, they say Hope Estate. Right? All right. That is the country's coconut industry. The number of farmers directly involved is 2360. That's the acreage in terms of acreage. The export is that per year, and that's the annual production between that million. Right? We have been recently been a contributing member to the ICC. So we pay our dues now to the ICC. With the blessing of the higher guys up, it was approved. Right? All right. We have 2 programs going in Guyana presently. The government came on board, and I'll explain that later on in the presentation. We have the National Coconut Decentralization Program. We have 10 coconut nurseries established, and the capacity to produce 206,000 seedlings annually if we run it at full capacity. We don't run them at full capacity, we stagger the cultivation, because if we produce this at once, the absorption, we will have a lot of spoilage. That's the result. And we also have the sensitization program, national, where we train farmers. We have regions in Guyana, so we have 10 regions, and so far we have trained that number of farmers. All right, those are the coconut nurseries. And we have 10 like these, 9 of this size, and we have what you call a modern nursery, which is much larger. Each of this you see here could produce 12,000 per annum or 3,000 every 3 months if run at full capacity. Right? This is how we establish it. This one is an area named Letem, very close to Brazil, and that one is an area near in Mabaruma, which is the tip of Guyana. They're very, very rural areas. Right? So number of farmers the past 2 years. In 2021, we had that number, and the total number of farmers nationally as 2022, we had a 19% increase since we kicked off the program. The acreage. We projected that the industry would have grown in 2021 by 1,000 acres. But in 2 years' time, it actually increased by almost 5,000 acres there. So my work, I could take a rest now. I've already achieved my target for 5 years. But you see, 2023, we are just at about 858 acres, and I'll explain that later. That's how it's graphically. I'm not too worried here. Because one, and I'll have to add to your data, we have now placed an order to Cohibra, and they are sending the other container of Brazilian green dwarf. That would make our importation to 28,000 green nuts for the year instead of the 14,000. All right, the expansion. When we started this program, we only could have produced only 1,500 seedlings. We were really struggling financially. I almost took over a bankrupt estate. That was our thing. Then Cardi came in, and nobody had wanted to take the risk, honestly. And Cardi came in and started to support the initiative. but it's not there. In the fourth year after Cardi supported us, I brought the production to 50,000. So if you look at 1,500 to 206,000, right? That's the capacity. And we only had if you go back, remember the nursery that I showed you? We only could have afforded about 3 bins at the time. 3 bins. Now the 3-bin nursery has 80 bins. Right? That's the main nursery at Hope Estate with a 25,000 capacity every 3 months. Right? Guyana was now, and you were there at the last meeting when the fireworks started. Right? This kicked off because a few years ago, Guadeloupe had an hurricane, and they came to Guyana for assistance. And I had about 20,000 seedlings ready to go to Guadeloupe to help them. And I couldn't have given them one because of the phytosanitary conditions. And the people were so desperate for help, and we were giving them, and they couldn't get it. So we had some fireworks, the ED was there, and I spoke my mind. That is how I am. And now this achievement, that has never happened before. We are able to assist Barbados with 2,000, and we have Trinidad, we have actually donated 5,000 seed nuts to them, right? And there are other countries, as Jamaica has asked me unofficially for some help, and we are going to help them. This is actually preparation for the export to Trinidad and Barbados. That is how we do it. They wash it. These are rough guys. And that is how we bag it in the onion bags to ship it, right? And so we do the selection as well, right? Those are the varieties grown in Guyana. We have the Suriname brown, currently referred to as the 18 months. The Malaysian green dwarf, you would know, the Panama and Jamaican tall. And we have some crosses as well. All right, introduction of the new variety from Cohebra. All right, we have never had an injection of any new material in Guyana for the past 40 years. And that is because we don't have a coconut breeding program. So our only option now is to, in terms to be ahead of the curve, we will have to import for now any variety that is suitable to Guyana. And as mentioned before, Cardi came on board, and it was a spin-off of the Agri-Investment Forum, but Cardi purchased through the ITC the first 1,000 seed nuts. And I said, I'm not going to settle for 1,000. So I went to the IDB, showed them the justification, argued my way out, and they purchased the second 1,000. I'm just showing you the thing. Then the government saw the initiative, and they purchased the first container of 13,000. Now, under my capital program this year, I had a 40,000 US savings from my capital program. It has nothing to do with coconut. I went to my minister, I said, here, man, this thing kicking off, people interest. Can I use this money? He said, get the necessary approval. So I need more than 40,000. That is why it's an advantage when you have a program that generates income, right? Like the coconut seedling program. I had to find almost 17,000 US more to match it. And I said I could, from my coconut sale, I have that money. Just give me this 9 million. He said, get this. Well, he called up, and I said, go. And I purchased it. I didn't wait for all the final approval. I just sent the money to Cohebra. So bring the coconut. That was the first container. Oh, this was the first set. I think you saw the picture. That is Mr. Jaman and myself. And when we got the first 1,000, Mr. Jaman said, when we reached the Hope Estate, he said, drop this thing and let's go to the first bar, right? We need to celebrate this thing. And then that's the first container. That's the minister, right? So you could see the first 1,000, the first 13,000, right? So we get in another 13. That is how we said we use what we call black sand, paddy husk, and now we start using, as we go along, we start using the coconut fiber to do the germination, and I'll explain that. That's the variety now, the one on the, my left. That's how the germination, that is the farmer that we started replication, so it's now starting to grow. That was from the first set, right? That's the size now, so we are new into it. All right, so I've touched on this, how we got the 13,000, and the IDB pitching with the second 1,000, then we got the 13, and now we're getting another 13. But the 28,000 based on our germination, and this is important, you're not going to get 28,000 seedling. You might get about 25,000. All don't germinate, right? So by the end of 2023, we'll have a total of 28 seed nuts imported for Brazil, and we are targeting 250 farmers to cultivate 5 acres of this, right? And next year's budget, I work with a budget cycle, Hope Estate. Next year's budget, I have finance for 3 other containers, but it doesn't mean it's going to come from Brazil. It might come from another country. But to be financially secure, I put it in the budget. So my target next year would be about 39,000, right? So the Brazilian green dwarf, as they had wanted me to expound upon, that is the germplasm in Guyana, has the potential as a game changer for Guyana's industry, increases seed garden for further local production. We never had the genetic base, so now we have it. That's the key there, the retail yellowing. Our coconut, that's the average water we get, 350 to 500 mil, but the Brazilian one is average is about 750. And for a 3-year, it's very, very rare that you will find a 3-year that gives you oil, water, copper, and milk that is suitable. Normally will be only 2, but this variety has the ability to do that. This is a challenge, some of the challenges. This is a major thing for us now. That's that's the waste that we produce. I put it in metric tons, and who don't understand it, that's in pounds and that's in kg. It's huge. It's huge. Right? So we are trying to tackle this problem. Right? So the government of Guyana has recently kickstarted an initiative to convert this coconut waste into useful fiber and for mulching and thing. But we have purchased 8 fiber machines, but that won't put a dent into the amount of waste. But it's move in the right direction. So we'll see what happens then. That's one of the machines. That is how we bring the coconut husks with our canter. You see a boat there? Because you have to go into the background, put it in there. It's very labor intensive. Then you get the fiber there. You get 2 things. If you see my hand there, I have a finer material in there. That's the cocoa peat. Right? That's in high demand. So the machine gives you the fiber and the peat as well. And that's my good minister there. And you're a good worker as well. He said, don't leave me out in anything. So that is how we use it. Now, if you use the fiber in this dry weather now, I would water, if I use the black sun and the paddy horse, I have to water at least 4 times per week. With the fiber, you water 1 time. Right? The fiber has the capacity to hold 10 times its mass. Right? So it cuts back on costs. Right? Yes. So that's it there as well. So we start using that as well. You want, sorry, I go back for you. They could always request the presentation because it's going to be the best one for this afternoon. So that's, if you come to Hope Estate, you will see this. This is the main nursery. You see you have more than 10 beds, it's spread out. So that is the 80-bed nursery. So the other challenges, we have to continue to look for suitable varieties. And we need, the second one is very important. And we need to form a national coconut development board for Guyana so the industry could work in a, function in a structural way. My little research at Jamaica has a coconut board, and I don't know if Cardi or anybody from CARIFORUM as well as Jamaica could help us to start this thing. We don't know how to do it, right? So that is one of the challenges we face. So right now, it just is no structure in form. And we have a serious problem with senile plants, but we have a challenge here. One, most of the estates are privately owned, right? Like that. That is a waste of time. But you can't go in the people's estate and knock down their plant just like them plant back. So the other solution, this is a serious thing. It affects the production significantly, right? But the other, that is why we try as much as possible to open new lands. So that is the other thing. When you open new lands, you start from fresh with a new plot. But if people are willing, we are asking the government to start a program where you could go and hit down these plants and help them, because it's an expensive program to clear the land and make the banks and so, to plant new plants. So that is just one. You will see a lot of this in Guyana. But like I said, people don't want it, especially if the father or the grandfather plant something, you can't go and just hit it down, right? So some of them will be receptive, some won't. So you don't really wait on that. We open in new lands, and in the meantime, if this kick off, then we're going to deal with it. Acknowledgement. I'd like to thank the people and government of Bahamas for hosting this thing and inviting me, CARDI, IDB, European Union, and Brazil. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Give it again. That was a very good presentation. What I like the most is how he decided that will be successful, and no matter what. Sometimes the interest of the people is what moves it forward. So congrats, you have to invite us, okay? Now we will see the experience with plants that are a little further, okay? You saw the plants, we have not seen production, and that's what you want. Let's see what is Grenada experience with production, and I guess we want to hear you, Reginald. We have Mr. Reginald, me and my glasses, and the CARDI representative for Grenada, so welcome him.
Thank you very much, Omira. I remember the days when I had you at my house. Yeah? Well, no, well, she was doing cassava training at the time.
I was consultant.
Yeah, you were the consultant. So we had one of the sessions downstairs, you know. Right.
I know the family, the wife and everybody.
Right. So that's just the icebreaker. I'm Reginald Andal, the CARDI agronomist or CARDI representative in Grenada. And my presentation today is not so much about the production of the tissue culture plants, but since that Omira mentioned it, this photo is actually showing the tissue culture plants in production on one of the farmers' field. So they are mature, well, not mature, but they are bearing. All right? The nuts are mature, but not the trees, obviously. But the trees are mature enough to produce fruits. Right. Okay, so we're talking about Grenada's experience with the tissue culture planting materials. And let me say that the presentation was put together by myself and our two coconut technicians, Nakima Patrick and Sabrina Thomas. And these tissue culture plants came from, well, let me hold that back, obviously, but I'll talk about it. It will come up in the presentation. So I'll give a bit of the background and look at the tissue culture intervention, then somewhat of the acclimatization and the factors affecting the acclimatization, and some of the pros and cons of using tissue culture planting material and where we are at present, going back to when we started in 2016. We've put up a photo here of the tissue culture plantlets when they just arrived from the laboratory. A bit of the background, some of you may recall that in 2004, we had a serious hurricane called Ivan, which did a massive devastation. And then July the following year, there was another one called Emily, which wasn't as bad, but anyway, it further added to the disaster on the agricultural sector in Grenada. So the coconut industry took a major hit from those hurricanes. And so in an attempt to revitalize the coconut industry, also, other industries, but nevertheless, we're focusing on coconut, the Ministry of Agriculture decided to acquire tissue culture material from the Mexican government through the Centro de Investigación Científica de Yucatán on 2 occasions, which were one in 2016, the other one was recently in 2023. In 2016, the AICA was asked by the Ministry of Agriculture to lead that importation of the planting material. And in 2023, the Ministry of Agriculture took on their own initiative to order the plantlets from Mexico with assistance from the International Trade Center. So let's look at some statistics. The varieties that were imported, you had way back in 2016, you had the Malayan yellow dwarf, the VTT tall, microacan, and so on. However, in 2023, we got some different planting material. The name is the Pilipog Pacific tall and a hybrid between the two Pacific talls. But the interesting thing about it is that the statistics, at the start, 1387 plants were received, and after the acclimatization process, only 618 remained or survived. So you had a survival rate of just about 45%. In 2023, a much smaller number, 500, were imported, and there were a little bit more training for the staff handling the tissue culture. But nevertheless, the percentage was a little better at 55 or 56%. So it was better. But personally, I feel we can get much more success, a much higher rate of success. I personally feel that, and I know why I say that, because looking at the conditions and the way things were, certain little things were handled, which I'm not going to say at this venture, I think we can get a much, much better success rate. So let's look at a little bit more detail in what happened. In 2016, they were using an open nursery. In 2023, they used a closed nursery. Back then in 2016, they were wetting by hand with a hose. The plants, after they were bagged out and ready to go, were on the floor, on the ground. Whereas we had better conditions here in 2023. You had the plants were placed on benches, metal benches. It was in a closed setting this time, a closed nursery. Just over 2016, it was just open. Anything could walk in. The moths and insects could come in, and that's what actually happened too in 2016. There were an incidence of insect larvae eating away at some of the plants, right? Then the wetting regime was not as good as in 2023. 2023, you had a better wetting regime at specific times in the day, at least twice per day. Then they were under the shade netting there was similar, but you had But in visiting there, well, let me say, this was controlled by the Ministry of Agriculture and not by CARDI, right? But we did have some degree of collaboration. So 2023, it was an enclosed situation, right? Similar potting media were used and so on. However, if you see here in 2023, the roots were treated with mancozeb fungicide. There was none of that treatment way back then in 2016. In both cases, clear plastic bags were used to cover the seedlings when they were newly potted out. So this is just a few of the key points that were followed in the acclimatization process. You have to make sure the people handling the plants, taking out the tissue culture plants from the bottles and to place in the bags. Your hands have to be properly cleaned, and you remove the plantlets from the jars. You wash out all the agar and wash all the roots, the agar from all the roots, and any dead planting material, whether it's leaves or roots, you remove them using a sterilized scissors, and you place these plants in your potting bags. I'm going to show you a photo a little later of that. But this here is a photo of after you place them in the potting bags and you cover them with your plastic bag. So you're sealing that with some rubber bands. So you're creating a microclimate in there to keep the plants, the moisture locked in, so to help the plants survive. Right, so you keep your plants upright to make sure you have that dome effect to keep in that microclimate. You do your little fertilization and other chemical treatments way later down after the plants have successfully rooted and they are growing. You don't want to put your fertilizer or anything early. So after they successfully rooted and they are growing, then you can place them in larger potting bags and you open it up. You don't use the cover anymore. So let's see. Right, this is what I was talking about. You remove the plants from your bags, you wash away all your agar, and then you place into your potting medium in your bags. You cover them, have them growing for a few weeks, and then when they're ready, you remove the bags and have them in the open. Factors affecting acclimatization way back in 2016, unsterilized soil, open nursery, as I mentioned, there was a high incidence of insect worms, some mole cricket skimming, and so on. The location, there was water shortage, and therefore that resulted in inconsistent watering. And one of the things you find happening there too in situations, the plants may need watering on the weekend, but nobody comes on the weekend. This happened in 2016, so all that helped to reduce the success rate. All right. In 2023, there was some degree of water shortage again, but then they counteracted that by wetting twice per day when things were when they had the water. There was some wind damage in affecting in some cases, but this was referring to the open area. I got that mixed up slightly with allowing the moths to enter. That was way back in 2016. Sorry about that. Some pros and cons of the tissue culture planted material. For example, that was much spoken about already. You have varieties that are resistant to lethal yellowing disease because nobody wants that disease. So you are importing varieties that are stated to be and proven to be resistant to the lethal yellowing. you're importing varieties too that producing large fruits with a large water content, large oil content, and giving high yields. And from the varieties we receive in 2023, that Pilipog variety is stated to be drought tolerant. And as you know, in these days of climate change, we're talking a lot about drought. Some of the constraints, you do find plants are susceptible to some local pests and disease. The South American palm weevil, for example, is one of them, which we do have some incidents on these tissue culture plants. This is an example of 2 photos there showing that happening. Of course, the major control measure or management measure for the weevil is trapping. So again, the trapping program in the Grenada context needs to be improved. The hybrids, one of the constraints there, the hybrids are not recommended as mother palms to use in to regenerate new plants. Actually, the concept that was spoken about way back in 2016 for the importation of these plants was to use them not just for production in the field, but to regenerate new planting material from those mother palms, from those plants. But subsequently, we are learning that they're not suitable for mother palms because you're not going to get the seedlings coming through to type. So that's a constraint. Then the acclimatization process itself, it takes some learning because the people you have handling these things may not be well versed in it, and that contributes significantly to what I consider a low success rate in the nurseries. Little information on the characteristics of some of the varieties, and we found that to a certain degree we were not supplied with all the characteristics that we wanted to know about this tissue, these plants that we were getting. We were requesting the information, so you have a very good idea of the characteristics, but it's not being supplied. Right, so these are just some of the pictures of what's happening in the field. This is one of the large nuts. They're giving 750 mils. And some of the plants on this farmer's field. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Okay, that was good. Yes, that is an issue that many people didn't realize, that hybrids cannot be multiplied as for production. And that is a good thing about green Brazilian. You could multiply planting material from it and the Malaya dwarf. But I guess the whole region is learning where they're going. And the idea was everybody wanted planting material, not necessarily to become seed producer. Then after they realized it's a market, so everybody want to get production of seed. So now we have a little time to wake up. And we open this for one question. Anybody have a question at this point? Or a comment that you think will be useful? Yes. Just state your name, where you're coming from, and stand and look at that camera.
Okay, thank you. I'm Francisco Lopez. I'm from the Secretary of the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources. And my question is, well, several of our presenters today, and thank you so much for all the presentation and for the hard work actually that you do, have referred to looking for material from third parties countries, no, for third upside. Or so my question is, have you actually looked for material in international collections? You mentioned, for example, India as a possible source of material, but have you actually tried to contact other collections, for example, in Southwest Pacific or in other international collections?
You would like to answer that one?
Thanks very much for the question. Okay. My name is Wayne Myrie from Coconut Industry Board. I work on the ITC CARD project. So we have approached the Philippines, let's not name anyone, we've approached people from the, or countries from from Asia and from South Pacific region. We were successful in getting some plans from Thailand, show the graciousness of the embassy, the Thailand embassy in Jamaica and the government of Thailand, which we have planted out. We have been trying to get other varieties from that region, and we are largely unsuccessful. Even going through ICC, International Coconut Community, we were unsuccessful. So I don't know if you have any leverage that you could help us to get some nuts from there. We would not want large numbers. We want them to grow out in the field so that we can test them for various things. One, against lethal alien disease. It's good to know that the varieties there have some tolerance just in case. They would share that information with them as well. Whatever the characteristics are, how it exhibits itself in Jamaica, that would be shared with them, so they'll have it. So it's a win-win, I think, for not only for the region or Jamaica, but for where it is going to be coming from. And of course, we have a very significant gene bank in Jamaica. We have close to 43 accessions, but we need to increase those accessions as well, because some of the accessions that we have are actually not tolerant to the lethal alien disease.
Thank you, Dr. Wayne. I also, okay, I also want to compliment on, well, yes.
Yes, to reply that, yes, we can actually support you to broaden the genetic base of the material, because through the international treaty, we have created a network of gene banks that exchange actual material not only among gene banks, but also for further evaluation and for use, basically. So we are happy, actually, to put you in contact with them. And also with information, actually, because most of the material, actually, that they have in those collections is well evaluated so far.
CARDI also have done some work trying to identify partners that will bring. Now, the issue in the Caribbean is everybody want plan for production, and the quantities they want are much more than what a treaty could bring, and that's the challenge. We are talking about 14 years just doing the exercise, if adequate for this region. So we definitely will like the material, the board in Jamaica, CARDI in the different countries, but also we need to get sources that are safe to move, because everybody wants just large quantities of planting material. Right now, as Guyana, Ricky explained, he has all this material, and that is only a dent of what people really looking for. The quantities are huge. The industry have an issue of senescent plants. Not only Guyana, Trinidad has a place called Manzanilla. All the plants are over 100 years old. Who going up there? Understand? So, and all of us have the same issue. Plus, the industry was based in tall plants, tall coconuts, so they are very, very tall. Now we have to develop a drone that could harvest for us, because the monkeys now are illegal, no? So those are, and that's the innovation, okay? We have to think out of the box. Who knows? A drone who could come and choose. So don't say to anybody. Okay, I hope you wake up. We will go to the other presentation, and then we will open again. So now we will have the second best coconut researcher in the world, Dr. Wayne Myrie. I just learned that he was named, and no, that's true. No, it's Natalia. No, but I want to recognize Dr. Wayne, and then I will say that Natalia will present. We want to recognize the fact that in the Caribbean, this work, Jamaica has been leading this in the region. And we also recognize Always we talk about CC, 30 years, 30 years. We have Jamaica with the board, the third board in the world, and the hybridization program that is in Belize came trained by Jamaican. And the hybridization program that CC have, that Mexico have, was trained by Belize. So in a way, the history say the Caribbean trained them, and we went back to them. And that's a lesson to learn. So many people here today. We hoping that in 30 years, new people, fresh people, like Dr. Bennett, will be able to take this forward, because I am amazed of the history of coconut in the Caribbean and how it all disappeared. So, Dr. Wayne, please stand. Take your clap. We are thankful for your work and for your team. We want to now invite Dr. Bennett. She will be the one presenting the work. We had the opportunity to meet in 2016, and through ITC, we were 3 Osantes of the Caribbean who went to CC to learn the technique. Dr. Bennett, myself, and from San Lucia, Dr. Agostini, I believe is her name. 3 of us went, and we evaluated and learned of it. And it was a beautiful experience. So good to see you again. Here is better, because I see this, so you can stand there. Yeah. Huh? Yes, right. There is good. Okay. So which one? This one? Yeah. This one? Yeah. You go?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Natalia Burnett, and I work with the Coconut Industry Board, and I work in vitro propagation of coconuts. So the thing about it is, a lot of us here have experience with plant tissue culture. So for those of us who don't know what exactly it is, I wanted to start from the beginning. So plant tissue culture is a group of procedures used to grow or propagate plants in vitro. In vitro, in a jar, in medium, under sterile conditions, control conditions, etc. Fine? These techniques allow the propagation of plants from plant cuttings. Usually we would use tips, nodes, etc. For plant tissue culture, one of the things that people are concerned about, let's put your minds at ease, there's no manipulation of plant genetics. Instead, plant growth regulators, which are natural to the plant, are used to induce the growth of shoots, roots, embryos, etc. Why coconut culture? I mean, to be fair, it grows fine from the nut. So let's look at it. We're going to look at 2 types of coconut culture. There's embryo culture. In embryo culture, the coconut embryo itself is recovered from harvested nuts and cultured to induce germination and growth of the entire plant before they are introduced into the field. For embryo culture, there's no multiplication. Why would we do it? Embryo culture is generally used for varieties with very low germination rates. You do have some nuts, some coconut varieties that literally don't germinate well. Some of them have very thick jelly, so they don't germinate well, so you use an embryo culture for that. Also, it's a gateway for, if you want to learn anything about coconut tissue culture, we generally start with embryo culture. Multiplication, via somatic embryogenesis. This is the one everybody is excited about. This technique has the potential to produce multiple plants over a short period. When we say short, we don't mean normal. If you're used to tissue culture, short period is something like a month, 3 months. That's not what we're talking about. But we're talking about a large number of plants. So explants are placed in culture and induced to produce first a callus, then somatic embryos, and multiple shoots. And this is all with the addition of the plant growth regulators that we're talking about. The explants used in coconut culture, coconut tissue culture, tend to be immature tissue. So those with the potential to change easily. So whether it be embryos, it's embryogenic tissue, so it has a potential to do a lot, or ovaries, inflorescent, or the pumus from the embryo. With repeated multiplication, a single explant can give you 10,000 embryos. And that is, well, for some countries, that is a small number. They've been reporting much larger numbers of multiplication, right? And this is what it looks like. So up top, A, by the way, this is taken from a paper. So this is Sri Lanka, which is one of the countries with the protocol. So A, you have the callus, B, you have somatic embryos, and then you have an outgrowth of shoots. The shoots are over here, and then over time you have the large plant. This is, I visited Sri Lanka, and these are the tissue culture plants from Sri Lanka. This is their hardening facility. Benefits of coconut tissue culture. One is the ability to grow the plants outside the nut. And this is especially important for varieties with low germination rate. 2, there's the ability to induce multiple shoots, which allows for large-scale production. 3, the plants are genetically similar to the parent plant, with a caveat. If you're using something like inflorescence or ovaries, of course, it's going to be similar to the parent plant because it's a parent that's producing that. If you're using embryos, it's 2 parents contributing to the embryo. Fine? And the last benefit of tissue culture, ease of transport, especially with the exchange of planting material between countries. It's supposed to make it a whole lot easier. Think about shipping the really, really small plantlets compared to a trailer full of seed nuts. And decided to show it. So benefits, importation of seed nuts is generally associated with high shipping costs. You literally have to go and get a container, shipping, fumigation, etc. You have to do all of that versus these are the plants when they come from tissue culture. So shipping tissue culture seedlings is usually easier. The plantlets are small. Multiple plants can be packaged per container. And you can easily just hand it off to somebody like DHL, which is generally how we get the plants from Mexico anyway. And that's why we do so much. Yes. So countries with this technology, there are a lot of countries that have done some work with tissue culture. The ones that have the asterisks beside them are the ones that have really, really robust protocols, multiplication. Jamaica, we have done some work with it. We have not perfected a multiplication protocol, still working on that. But the one that has the one that's most famous for it is Mexico. So our goals at the Coconut Industry Board. 1, we always want to create and maintain a gene bank of local and exotic varieties for Jamaica and the Caribbean. 2, develop protocols of plant tissue culture, both embryo rescue protocols and multiplication, to enable the mass propagation or production of superior cultivars. And what we call superior cultivars, we don't mean that, they're fancy. We just mean everybody has different requirements. For those of us who in countries with LY, then we're looking for LY tolerance. For those of us who are interested in water production, great production of water, etc., it just depends on what it is that's important to you and to your market. We also are very, very interested in establishing protocols for the safe exchange of germplasm between countries. So those are some examples from our protocol. Even though we've been doing it a while, it's a very small program. So these are some examples of what we were doing. This is our embryo culture. This is our embryo culture. These are hardened plants in the fields, and that's what we have been doing so far. So with the ITC CARDI project, so there's been a global wave of new research and collaboration in coconut tissue culture, especially with multiplication protocols and the transfer of cultured plants between countries. And this global wave of research and everybody wanting more coconuts is in response to increased demand, both the immediate products, the coconut water, oil, and milk, as well as value-added products, creams, soap, I don't know, everything else. So coconut is having its day. And we all need to figure out how to make best use of it. In response to the global wave of new research is also in response to dead or declining populations that produce very few nuts, and that's a very big deal. Terribly sorry. And that's a very, very big deal because we have so many existing farms, etc., with dead or declining populations, and they need to be replanted for the most part. There's a push for protocols, for more labs that work on these protocols, to produce multiple plants from desired varieties, etc. And just product demand. Just looking at one product and one product only, coconut water, and just looking at one market, the US, and what you can get there. So there is a demand for coconuts. As part of the ITC, CIB, CARDI project, the Coconut Industry Board was part of a collaborative effort involving the transfer of technology from CC, Mexico, that is, to the DOMREP and the Coconut Industry Board, Jamaica. Participating institutions, ITC, CIB, Coconut Industry Board, CC, Mexico, Vitro Plantas in DOMREP, and CARDI. The project started, this present one, started in 2022 and included one, technological transfer from CC to other participating countries. 2, the transfer of in vitro propagated coconut plants from CC to the other 2 participating countries. And 3, subculture the importing plants. So this was the one that was a little different from what everybody else did. Everybody got, well, the others got tissue cultured plants and planted them out. Here we wanted to see, is it possible to get them from Mexico, put them back in the jars and grow them out? Because it's cheaper. The smaller you get them, the cheaper it is. And of course, with that, you're also increasing the capacity of the people in the receiving country because they get the experience of culturing the plants, etc. Research team, so as we said, the first leg of this project was research teams from Jamaica and DOMREP traveled to Mexico to be introduced to the protocols and techniques for in vitro culture of coconuts. These protocols included, they taught us media prep, their exact techniques for embryo culture, sterilization techniques, and the subculture of plants and hardening protocols. So this is what it looks like. So when you mentioned, who was it who mentioned, my good friend? When you mentioned trimming the plants, this is how we do it in vitro. So you have to do it under sterile conditions. You trim off all the necrotic tissue. You put them back in culture. We also looked at hardening of mature plants. And then there was the importation of tissue cultured plants. So 1,602 tissue cultured plants were imported from Mexico in October 2022 via DHL. Varieties included the Mexican tall, also called Pacific tall. And then there's a Pillipog dwarf tall hybrid. So these varieties are thought to be tolerant to LY, and they're supposed to mature very quickly. When we say mature, I mean produce fruit very quickly, and supposed to produce high yield. The cultured plants were first examined by the phytosanitary teams in Mexico prior to shipping, and again examined by phytosanitary teams in Jamaica. So this is what it looked like. Very small container, very small enough box, not a container, as in, the trailer. Right. Then the imported plants were subcultured under the guidance of Maria Narves from CC. So she's like one of the chief technologists, and she came over and provided further training. So this was actually done at SRC, because Scientific Research Council in Jamaica, because at CIB we don't have per se a tissue culture lab. So she came over and she trained the individuals who are going to be carrying out the work, including everybody. Again, media preparation, sterilization of instruments and media, and instructions on the subculture of coconut plants. So again, here's Maria showing everybody how to culture the plants. So for the most part, the training was successful, shipment was successful, subcultured plants in the growth room, spoke in the wheel. So we received 1,602 plants from Mexico, and over time we got contamination. And so there was contamination, and we were very concerned about the contamination. And we had a meeting to discuss progress because, of course, we have other partners, DOMREP, CC. So we had a meeting. So during the year in culture, it was noted there was a high incidence of bacterial contamination. The organism produced yellow colonies, which were extremely slow-growing and seemed to originate from the plant. Vitra planters from DOMREP reported they also faced the same high incidence of contamination. With the same slow-growing bacterium, similar colony morphology to that seen in our cultures. And that's what it looked like. All right. So one of the things with having collaboration is that, you want to go back? No, wait. So one of the good things about having a collaboration is that you have many different opinions. Everybody can sit down, have a discussion. And that was a very interesting meeting. So as the bacterium is present from plants in DOMREP and Jamaica, this is either contamination from Mexico or an endophyte. And most agree that the organism is most possibly an endophyte, which explains some of what we've seen. So the thing about it is that if you've done tissue culture with coconuts, you've probably seen this before, because I've seen this at CC, I've seen it with me, but not at this level. Not at this level. So it is present, but not at the high incidence that we're seeing it now. So the outgrowth is then possibly either stress-related through travel or differences in culture conditions, etc. So this is something that we need to look into. So matters arising from discussions. Lots of questions. Is it the same species that's present in our samples? Is it species present in other varieties? Of course, what is the identity of the organism? And if it's found in species which are tolerant to LY, because so the indigenous microflora plants, just like our gut microflora and skin, etc., it provides some kind of benefits. So the question is, does it play a role in tolerance? Or does it, or any other important agronomic characteristics? Or is it just bad and we need to get rid of it? Is it better to treat the plants with antibiotics, which would remove the endophytes? Or is it better to learn what the stressors are, which cause the outgrowth of the bacterium? So, plans for future work. We always use this word, continued collaboration to isolate, identify, and characterize the bacterial contaminant associated or endosymbiont associated with these cultures. Using 16S sequencing and other techniques. We want to identify it, we want to know what it is, we want to look at several colonies, and we want to do it across the different countries. We want to develop standard protocols to assess plants in culture, to identify and treat contaminants, potential pathogens, and this goes, of course, hand in hand with increasing the capacity of existing diagnostic labs. Because the thing is, this is not something that we would have even seen if it wasn't for tissue culture. Because if you just have the plants and you grow them out, you would never have seen this. So hand in hand with increasing the capacity of existing diagnostic labs. The other thing to note is that when you get the plants are in culture. It is immediately obvious if it is contaminated, and they were not. When you plant them out, it is immediate. I mean, when you subculture them, it is immediately, this plant, this culture, the medium has about 60 grams of sugar per liter. If bacteria is in there, it will grow out. You will see it. And it was something that happened over time. So this is not just, oh, they came like that. So it is something else to think about. So this goes hand in hand with increasing the capacity of existing diagnostic labs, as well as introducing this diagnostic capacity to other countries or in other countries. Okay. Continued development of tissue culture protocols. We are still interested in tissue culture. We have been culturing our own plants. We are still interested in getting plants from elsewhere. We are just more knowledgeable. Fine. So embryo culture, somatic embryogenesis, as well as, honestly, we will need this protocol to transfer. So we are still interested in developing this protocol. Continued collaborations with countries that are further ahead with this technology, and with countries who may be interested in either multiplication or embryo culture protocols. Manage and standardize current germplasm. That's the last one, I think. And this is something that we have to do. If it is that we're going to be transporting this germplasm, we have to know what it is. It can't be that you think it is a dwarf, or you think it is LY tolerant. You have to know. So document phenotypes for established varieties, ensure the varieties are true to type, and introduce fingerprinting, DNA fingerprinting, to rapidly identify different varieties. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burnett. That was a very interesting presentation. Well, it has been a very nice whole morning and afternoon. I think everybody is excited. I am particularly excited. I will after interrogate you. But I'm happy to know that we realized we could do it. No, we always looking outside. We could do that. No, now I invite Tristan to wrap up, and then we will have a few. We having a session up for you all to, like a discussion. So.
All right, thank you very much, Omara, and thanks to the participants who went before. Omara is not lying when she says she's excited. I had to tap her on the shoulder and say, cool it, right? So what I want to do is just once again reiterate that this project is one that we've been at for just around 8 years, and we are actually winding down. The project ends April 2024, but it's on the ground activities really come to an end at the end of this year, 2023. And so the matter of sustainability really comes to the fore. We don't want things, of course, to stop, a hard stop and die. We want to ensure that all of the assets and infrastructure and training is put to use. So it's great to see the interest by Guyana and the strides that they have made, but arguably you don't have that interest everywhere. And so you need to institutionalize it one way or the other. And so this is the discussion that we want to have. How can we move forward in an institutionalized way with regards to the movement of coconut germplasm, while still recognizing the sovereignty among island states and, of course, entire CARICOM? There have been some back and forth discussions, and we didn't know how to broach this, so we decided to make it a discussion. And the feedback that we get and we garner from this discussion, we make the commitment to put it before COTED for some decision to be made as the way forward. CARDI sits as the chair of the Coconut Commodity Group, which falls under the Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Cluster. These are CARICOM mechanisms for the coordination and collaboration of agriculture and agricultural work programs specific to commodity and thematic areas. And so CARDI will be able to bring this under the AFNC and through the Coconut Commodity Group to quoted for some level of decision as to the way forward. One such model that was postulated was that of a single advisory committee in terms of providing support as a service to private and public entities interested in moving germplasm within and from extra-regional sources. Of course, we recognize that there's no silver bullet to solve the issue of coconut planting material. They all have their pros and cons that come with it. And so this is where we want to kick off the discussion, And just to give a little definition, because we ourselves were trying to come up with a definition for what this single window advisory committee would be. Essentially, it came around to be a body that would serve as the nexus of anyone who wants to procure planting materials. So you want to source material from Brazil, you would come to the single window advisory, and that will be the hub of information and protocols for the movement of germplasm. They would have also visit sites in Brazil and give some level of certification for a period of time to say that it's safe to operate. And so your chances of success in getting the approvals to import planting material would be much higher, not a guarantee, because once again, still respecting the sovereignty of states, than if you were to go it alone. So it was meant to give you a level of confidence, as it were. Now, earlier in the previous session, there were a number of thought out discussions made. Dr. Lawrence made the point that we do have some robust institutions and tools. We have the Caribbean Plant Health Directorate. We do have pest lists that we've been able to garner. CAFSA has put together guidelines for commodities and they've committed to doing so for coconuts. Is it enough? Or do we need something like this single window advisory? Or is there another model that can exist regionally to assist countries in moving forward and advancing the movement of coconut germplasm material without leaving anyone behind? So I'll pause here, and this is where we'll enter into that open discussion. The discussion is not limited to what I just spoke to, but I do hope you'll be able to touch on these points and leave here with a sense of direction after this meeting.
I want to add something. The other thing we have to realize is how much plant we really need in the region. One, we all are crazy looking for coconut planting material, but we have experiences where you give it to the farmer and the farmer never planted. Understand? So you just lost the effort. And sadly, that happened in Grenada, that happened in other countries where the farmer actually got the material and just left it there. So we have to really create in that single window some compromising that you could see this going to the fields. The other issue is people planting, not following the protocol, but expecting miracles. Poor soil, not the right way to plant. So it's a whole combination of things. So I would like to bring that too, because a lot of training, but you're not seeing forward. Only the big guys and the small guys say, but you're not helping me. What do you want me to do? I cannot go and plant it. But that is something we have to figure out, a commitment system that we force them to plant it. If you want our help, we have to go with you, Johan, to see you succeed. So, anybody? Okay. Remember the name and let's look at that camera.
So, Damien Rowe from Jamaica. My comment is really on the phytosanitary point. Tissueculture is always seen as clean material. When we have a report that says a possible introduction of a bacterial fungus it's quite alarming. It raised a red flag. And I know there are countries, a member state here that don't want to hear anything like that. They are more on the prohibition of coconut material. And they have a valid reason for that because it's really high risk. You don't want to bring something in your country that you never had before and aggravate the entire issue. Now, I know for Jamaica, there is a need to do that back trace to really determine if that contamination is a result from Mexico. I know when we do a requirement for coconut planting material coming in, tissueculture, there are a set of requirements for pathogens to be screened for. And if any of these actually pass through and come to your country or come to our country, it's a quite alarming situation, and we have to really aggressively do that back trace to determine what is or why this happened, if it's a local contamination or if it was actually an introduction. But we have to really start the process.
So, and we agree because we did contact, I mean, before we bought in the coconut plants, we did mention, we did have an agreement with the ministry as to what would be done. There were protocols that were set up. We had said, once the plants come in, whatever material that they came in with, they would be sterilized, autoclave, and that's the thing with tissue culture. Anything that is contaminated is autoclave. Autoclave 121 degrees Celsius kills everything before anything else happens. And in addition to that, in addition to ensuring that that was done, other things we had said that we would test for LY, etc., even though there are tissue culture plants. We had mentioned that. And we had said that another thing with tissue culture is that it is a contained plant. It is in a bottle and in a lab for a very long time. So the thing is, during that time, we fully intend to do the LY testing. We fully intend to do the 16S testing before they go anywhere else. So this was always an agreement with the ministry. It was in a document that was given, and it was these are some of the things we fully intend to do.
Just a comment in respect to what you're saying. Yes, we value that protocol that must be in place. The good thing is that you have a proper control system in place that will mitigate or prevent any spread outside of your facility, and that must be recognized. So for anyone who wants to import a risky material of this sort, have to be mindful that your control, once it comes across the border, you have to have a proper control system to mitigate or prevent anything adverse going into the environment. You have to have that control at the primary step to prevent it from going out. So I respect the system that you have in place, respect the relationship with the ministry, but we have to recognize it and keep echoing that there is a strong need to have a good mechanism at your inland, because it's not border anymore. So it's really inland, post-border.
You could go ahead. Your name and look at the camera.
Yes, I'm Alvin Murray from the Sustainable Agriculture Project in the Caribbean, funded by World University Service of Canada. Just by way of information or share some experience, we had problems with ginger in Jamaica. Our technician was routinely treating with antibiotics and got some reasonable results. But then we eventually decided to check on the material, and it was eventually sent to Belgium. And they were, after about 6 months, they were able to rid the material of endogenous bacteria. While it was not causing any disease as such, but it was there and was of concern. The material has since come back and shared with the 3 tissue culture labs in Jamaica, and they have been multiplying that material. So maybe something to think about.
Yeah, Leroy McLean, Consultant Minister of Agriculture, Barbados. Now, you talk about getting excited. I get excited hearing about this contaminant because this might be a great opportunity for some advanced research work, either at the University of the West Indies or somewhere. Because first of all, to determine what this organism is, and secondly, you talked about the possibility of it. Does it contribute to the resistance in particular species? So all of this is work, I think, that this provides an opportunity. And quite frankly, Mo and I would be getting some research students on this very quickly. First of all, like I said, because that microbiology gets me very excited, so that's my area. So I would be looking to see what is this thing, and then looking at the material from the plants which are resistant, and determining whether it is there, in fact, as part of the organism, as part of the material, sorry.
It's important to know that endogenous bacteria sometimes they are too weak to express in the environment. So, and they have methodologies, tissue culture methodologies, that we could use to clean it. The excitement is that at least we're seeing something that expresses that we could figure out what it is. No, that's bad, but that is mainly what it is. But we could clean the material locally, and some of them never will express outside. What we want to know is what is the effect if they express that much. Anybody else have a question? Professor Omar.
Yeah, good day. What I'm really looking for is some collaboration.
You have to look at that camera.
Yeah. It's not on. All right, good day. Renato Gomson, Vincent and the Grenadines. What I'm really looking for is some collaboration with your tissue culture facility and our facility. We have a pretty good facility, pretty large, and we have a pretty good technician, Rohan. So I don't want him to start from scratch and doing over what you went through already and this kind of thing. So we'll look for that kind of collaboration.
Okay. Now my name is Pat Umaharan. I am from the University of the West Indies. Now I'm just thinking about this is a new area. I am not into coconuts, but I was just wondering to avoid contaminations. I mean, well, as you said, contamination may be useful. Maybe it's endogenous and it's useful in terms of providing value. But usually, when you are doing risk assessment in GMOs, we do it on a step-by-step basis, right? So you do tissue culture, you do the screening, then you grow it in the greenhouse, under which you evaluate it again and test it again. And then before you take it to a confined field trial, where you test it further under field conditions, and before you release it to the farms and so on. So I was wondering whether you could use such a step-by-step process so that you avoid any sort of risks emerging from the process of introduction. Just thinking.
Thank you, Professor Maharan. Any more questions? Huh? Yeah, please.
So for tissue culture, we definitely use that approach because the plants are first examined before we actually even culture them. So if you find that they are contaminated, if you see evidence of it on the media, then you autoclave. They have to be grown up in the lab. For coconuts, they take a while. It's at least 10 months in media before they're mature enough, to 1 year, before they're mature enough to actually be put in the field. So you do see a lot of this, so you can discard whenever. Then they have to be hardened in a hardening facility. So again, it is constrained. And then we had planned, if it is that they are going out in the field, to ensure that these are our fields, we know exactly where it is, isolated, etc.
Thank you. Any more questions? Any comment?
Sean Cameron, Coconut Industry Board, Jamaica. My position is that the Coconut Industry Board of Jamaica is willing to offer services to the various Caribbean partners in maintaining the ITC Cardi project when it ends April 2024. We have a gamut of scientists. The second best coconut scientist in the world. We have the third best coconut farmer in the world. And as you can see, we have done significant research with our partnership and partners in tissue culture. But what the Coconut Industry Board provides is an anchor for our Caribbean partners to pull on us for particular support and maintain our partnership while ITC and Cardi may go a different path, but still be our partners. But we want to be the anchor for the Caribbean when it comes to you building out your coconut orchard. So we provide training on nursery management, seedlot selection, plant breeding, and so forth. So please reach out to us if you're interested in developing the capacity within your country. Rick from Guyana is interested in building up a coconut industry board. We existed from 1945, Rick, 77 years. We're old. Right, have a lot of experience and knowledge. And I should point out when the lethal yellowing disease destroyed our industry, because at the time Jamaica had 9 million coconut trees. Lethal yellowing destroyed 8 million trees, Gilbert destroyed 1 million. Based on the research department that was created in 1959, we were able to come up with the unique variety of the Mapan that was resistant to lethal yellowing. And because of that, we were able to resuscitate our industry. We have a planting program to help our farmers plant out the program where the Coconut Industry Board distributed free seedlings to our farmers, 500 over a 5-year period, weed grant and fertilizer, just to resuscitate our industry. And now we're looking at varieties for production, hence our partnership with CC Mexico, that you can yield more oil, more water, because we're looking at the value-added side of things. Now, from a strategic perspective, for an entity to be relevant and be modern in today's environment, we need to be agile. We need to can hop and skip when there are challenges. And the Coconut Industry Board is transforming itself now to be more agile. So we want to focus in agro-processing, value-added products. So we want to be a one-stop shop for our Caribbean partners when it comes to leveraging our expertise at a cost, because we have to fund ourselves. However, I think it's the best way to grow our Caribbean community. And the partnership, the project, the 8-year project that was mentioned, we had significant strides. You can speak to Rick about that. You can speak to other Caribbean countries and the success they have having. And we don't only rely on the starting product. We support the value-added product too. Only Coconuts in Guyana is a company we can speak to, and Vineyard Town Ice Cream Blend, ITC, has put significant push behind those entities at the agro-processing end and give them platforms in the Americas to sell their products and so forth. So we're looking at the entire value chain, and I just want to point out again that the Coconut Industry Board is here for you. Thank you.
Yeah. I have a question. You have that in the website? We could tell the farmers going there and you get there?
We're developing that capacity.
All right, Ricky Rupchan, General Manager, Hope Coconut Industries, Guyana. A couple of things quickly. As your program would have come to a close, I want to assure you we are now sustainable. We can sustain ourselves, right? With the volume and the sales that we make, we can sustain ourselves. So thank you very much, ITC and Cardi, for that. So I won't be in my begging mode coming to Cardi anymore. So that is the first thing. In terms of tissue culture, we have I'm not talking as the general manager now. I sit on the board for the National Agriculture Resource Institute, NARI in Guyana. They have a tissue culture lab, but they're upgrading it now. So tissue culture, they had some training. And they have one person that was trained in Mexico actually, that's there. But somehow they can't get it off the ground for some reason or the other, because I have been pushing for it at the board. So we might need some guidance from you guys, right, in that aspect. We have an issue now in Guyana where the demand for coconut water has outpaced the supply, right? The culture there was that we have a lot of vendors as well. The coconut farmer would take the coconut to the vendor at some point, and the vendor would pay him there, and that's it. Now the table has turned. The coconut vendor takes his pickers to the farm because of the competition. Pick the coconut, bring it out, and pay the guy. The demand is so high now, right? So that is how the senile issue is affecting us, right? So I just wanted to mention that to you guys. Our approach in research, we have to start from scratch. And the information I got from Cohibra, Brazil, for this dwarf variety, they said it took 15 years to breed it. We can't wait in Guyana to breed anything now. So the guys in the upper food chain, the politician, right? I went to them, the higher ups, and I told them, on certain terms, this is the position, and they give me the okay to import. So our strategy now is to import new varieties. We can't wait. We will not wait. And the people in Guyana goes for the hybrid and the early bearing. We have one called Suriname Brown, but they say 18 months, but it bears in 22 months. I don't know how it got a name, right? So we will be importing whatever is suitable to us. That I just want you to know that will be our approach. The research aspect will take a back bench for now. Right? Right? The other issue is that the coconut fiber issue is a serious thing. And we could only carry it to the production and the thing. We could only produce this fiber and this cocoa peat. It could go to a different stage to actually a packaged product for sale. I know the potential. But we don't know how to do it. The IDB was there. And they met with me at Hope Estate, and I told them the truth. And they are willing. I don't know how much funds they're going to provide for us, but I submitted the proposal to them Sunday before I came here. And the guy told me he went to the representative for the IDB in the Caribbean was at Hope Estate with the Guyana rep, and they are willing to support us. But we, as Guyanese, as myself, I told them, you YouTube the thing, but it's more than that. I don't know how to take it beyond that. I'm going to say that here. So we need the help how to. You are talking about value added. So
I want to, they had a company, a shoes company, who came to Trinidad while I was in the Tobago Cardi office, looking for coconut for shoes that are for winter. That is explore that nobody have. They do it, they just mash it and put it, dry it. It's for the soles. So it's something we should explore because they needed a lot. And I told them at that time, nobody had that quantity. We have a lot. Well, now you could.
Wayne Myrie from Coconut Industry Board, ITC CARDI project. In fact, it's the Alliance for Coconut Development in the Caribbean. That's the official name of the project. Yes. The coconut husk, we have been experimenting in Jamaica with it in collaboration with the University of the West Indies. A colleague there, I won't give his name now. We have come up with a prototype of a filter that we're almost there ready to share. And what this filter has, the potential it has, is to remove heavy metals from water. We have done several experiments, and it has removed lead and you name it. A couple of, yes, yes, from water. So we are excited about that prospect. We're in the phase now of sharing this. I had to get permission from the GM to speak about it. We are now in the phase of having a prototype ready to be shared. Secondly, when you do this sort of research, oftentimes you have secondary spin-offs from it. And we have found a large amount of silica in the coconut coir, which we think has some potential, and we're looking into that potential as well. There's also 21 compounds that has some insecticidal properties. Well, they are classified into 3 groups: phenolic, acid, and carbonyl. And it has some potential there as well. So, you know, it's something that you can think about, Ricky, with the experts in Guyana. We're sharing the information with you.
The government in the next month, or this I think in October, because of my lobbying, they are bringing some people from India. And there will be, I think, 2 specialists from India which will work with Guyana specifically on coconuts. So when they come, that is the help. I'm sure that would the help we would get. And I just wanted to know that we are looking because we are desperate, right? And the Indians said they were going to provide these specialists, so we're going to grab them and see what they can do, right? Okay.
All right, so just to say a few comments and then perhaps lead into a question. First to recognize that both Guyana and Jamaica are members of the international coconut community, right? So you could see where their drive has taken them. So that's something to honestly give credit to and to acknowledge and follow suit, right? And we could leverage those that capacity that they have, right? And that leads me into hybridization. We haven't talked much about it today, although it's also part of the title, right? I believe hybridization to be one of the robust ways, although I know Ricky say I can't wait, right? But you would find that Belize has a good hybridization program. Jamaica, of course, has a good hybridization program. And it has been the intent of the project to facilitate and leverage the expertise of CIB to provide capacity building to ministries of agriculture in terms of helping them roll out their own hybridization program in the future. Now, I suppose the question is this viable? Is this something that we would like to see, as part of engendering and institutionalizing sustainability for the supply of coconut material? And granted, once again, it's not a silver bullet. It's going to take time, but it might allow for a measure of resilience within the country compared to the tissue culture approach as well as the importation of seed nuts approach. So I'll leave it there for open discussion as well.
I personally think, yes, it has a value. And the value is that we have to start now the 14 years. We cannot wait. We have the majority of us have plants that are coming to an end. In some countries, you replant and you have issue with weevil. That is also now hybridizing for weevil. So I think we have to start now, 14 years. We started 10 years ago. If we started then, imagine we only 4 years apart. So definitely we have to start, no? And we have to train new capacity. Yes, Professor.
As a breeder, I think I have to make some comments on the hybridization programs. And I think, I have been working on cocoa, but coconut being also a long-term plant, I think developing molecular markers would be very useful. I don't know the status of genome sequencing in coconut. I haven't really looked at it, but I think this is something that we can help because we are doing a lot of work with cocoa and we understand the process, how to do it. And the other thing is that in cocoa, when you cross two different plants, trees, the seedlings are highly variable because they are both heterozygous. And typically what they say is that 20% of the plants produce 80% of the yield, right? So, this is why, to reduce that variability, you have to do sibmating. You need to select the best plants from the progeny and then cross them again to reduce that variability before you supply to the farmers. And I think that is one of the reasons why it takes a couple of generations before you can get some fairly uniform plants, which you can now collect from those seed gardens and give it to farmers, right? So setting up, this is a long-term process, and Jamaica probably has gone through several generations. And that is why going back and starting over in another country is going to take you 3 generations back. So starting from some selections that you have done and taking it forward, how do you take the populations to different countries in the Caribbean, setting up seed gardens in different countries so that they can now further select under their conditions, adaptation and so on, and create hybrids for farmers. So this is the kind of approach I think we need to think as a region, because going back to starting over, it takes a long time, and so on. So.
Any other comments? Okay, well then, this brings the end of our session. I personally like to take a group photo. I think it's good to know all of you. They have anybody online? No? So if not, I just will invite you in front. Thank you very much for taking part of this. ITC, we hoping to continue seeing you in the region, but this will be to remember this time what we say, and in a few years, I hope we all could see and say, oh, remember when we didn't have tissue culture planting material, remember when we didn't. So those are things that we will share when we will solve those issues. So thank you very much for taking part. Thank you for the alliance, and we're looking forward to continue the work. So just come in front, please, for a group photo.